Most of the improvised bombs, or the IEDs, killing Americans in Afghanistan are made from material that's actually produced in Pakistan. Brian Todd is here with more on this story. What's going on here, Brian?
Well, U.S. officials frustrated that this stuff is coming from Pakistan in the first place, and that in their view, Pakistani officials have not acted with enough urgency to help remove the biggest threat to American troops in the region.
Sudden, concussive, lethal. IED attacks are the #1 killer of U.S. troops in Afghanistan, responsible for more than 400 deaths there over the past 2 years. U.S. officials are growing increasingly upset over the source of the main ingredient in these homemade bombs, an American ally. U.S. officials tell CNN the vast majority of IEDs in Afghanistan, 84%, are made from fertilizer produced in Pakistan.
When you see an explosion that is one fraction of the real explosion and how powerful and overwhelming that is, it gives you a sense of real frustration.
Senator Robert Casey was recently in the region and watched American troops demonstrate the force of IEDs. Casey's been leading U.S. efforts to put pressure on Pakistan to stop the flow of the fertilizer called calcium ammonium nitrate into Afghanistan.
What can the Pakistanis do? What are they doing to stop this material from getting into Afghanistan?
Well, they've put into place a strategy, but we need to see that strategy actually implemented. It's one thing to have a written plan. It's another thing to implement it, where they can regulate the flow by making sure that they're tracking it.
Casey says the Pakistani government simply isn't moving fast enough to more effectively track where calcium ammonium nitrate goes. U.S. officials say most of that fertilizer is produced by 2 Pakistani companies. Part of the problem is that it's a legitimate product made for farmers to use for their crops. Afghanistan doesn't make calcium ammonium nitrate, has banned it, and has tightened border security in an effort to keep it out.
A big part of the problem, though, is this is a very porous border, right?
It's an extremely porous border. So we've seen for U.S. Marine forces operating in Helmand province here, the ability of insurgents to get components across up through the Helmand River Valley to target U.S. Marine forces operating in the south. Also for U.S. Army forces operating in eastern Afghanistan, taking components through areas like the Khyber Pass and targeting U.S. Army forces operating in eastern Afghanistan.
Seth Jones, a former advisor to U.S. Special Operations Command in Afghanistan, says the Pakistan-based Haqqani network and other militants have gotten very proficient at trafficking that fertilizer into Afghanistan.
A Pakistani official we spoke to disputed Senator Casey's criticism that his government's not moving fast enough to track this fertilizer. The official said Pakistani authorities are moving as fast as they can, that it's difficult to track the small amounts placed in the IEDs out of huge amounts of fertilizer produced. And he says it's got to be a joint effort on both sides of the border. The Pakistanis have an interest in this, Wolf. 500 Pakistanis alone this year killed by IEDs inside Pakistan.